Did Prince William just say, "I will jail you," live on air? And was that threat directed not at a rogue politician, not at a foreign adversary, but at his own sister-in-law, Meghan Markle? The cameras were rolling. The microphones were hot. The nation was watching. And for one fleeting, thunderous moment, the future King of England lost the tight grip he had held for years. It wasn't just a slip of the tongue. It wasn't a whisper in a hallway or a private diary entry leaked by palace staff. It was a visceral outburst, bold, deliberate, and impossible to walk back. And it sent shockwaves through both sides of the Atlantic. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Because this time, the gloves were off. The crown, cracking at the seams. For years, the House of Windsor held itself as a symbol of restraint, dignity, quiet strength. But beneath the gilded portraits and velvet-lined chambers, an ugly war had been brewing. It wasn't about foreign policy or ancient traditions. It was about Meghan Markle. Or, more accurately, what Meghan Markle represented. To some, she was a breath of fresh air, a biracial American actress who married into the most exclusive royal club on earth. To others, she was an opportunist, allegedly using palace prestige as a stepping stone for personal fame. But whichever side you fall on, one thing is undeniable. Something snapped. Because this wasn't just about titles or tabloids anymore. This was about criminal allegations, legal threats, and a royal family on the brink of internal collapse. "I will jail you." Where was William when he said it? Let's rewind. The setting was supposed to be innocuous. A charity engagement, cameras present, microphones mounted, journalists held at a respectful distance. Prince William had just wrapped up a speech on youth mental health. He was gracious, collected, and smiling, until someone asked a question off script. A question about Meghan Markle. A question that, by all accounts, was not approved in the official media rundown. What happened next wasn't supposed to be heard. But the BBC mic picked it up. Several independent journalists confirmed it. William, turning away from the podium, muttered, "No," declared. Something that would ricochet across the world. "She thinks she's untouchable. I swear, if she keeps lying like this, I will jail her." The room froze. Even seasoned royal reporters, used to carefully worded sound bites, blinked in disbelief. Was this a personal remark? A legal promise? A PR nightmare? No one knew. But the message was clear. Prince William wasn't bluffing. What lies was he referring to? That's the billion-pound question, isn't it? What could drive a future monarch to publicly threaten legal action against his own family member? Was it Meghan's repeated TV interviews alleging royal racism? Was it her Netflix series, subtly casting William and Kate as cold and complicit? Was it the Oprah interview, where Harry claimed William was trapped in the system? Or was it something far more recent and far more sinister? In the weeks leading up to William's verbal explosion, multiple royal insiders had reportedly expressed concern over a fresh round of embellished statements Meghan was preparing to release, this time involving Princess Diana's legacy, alleged mistreatment, and her children's royal status. According to a leaked memo from palace staff, Meghan was planning to appear in a U.S. media exclusive, where she would reveal new behind-the-scenes bombshells that could alter public perception of the monarchy permanently. Sources claim this was the breaking point for William. Because now, Meghan wasn't just rewriting her own narrative. She was allegedly rewriting his mother's. And for William, that was a line you don't cross. But why now? Let's not pretend this war began overnight. Tensions have been simmering since 2018, when Meghan joined the royal family. From the controversial exit of key palace staffers to the dramatic Megxit of 2020, the Sussexes have operated increasingly like a rogue state. But William? William held the line. He rarely responded. He refused to engage. Even when Harry dragged him into interviews, William kept his responses calm, measured, silent. Until now. So what changed? Some say William received new legal findings. Others point to pressure from donors and royal supporters, furious about the impact of Meghan's interviews on public trust. But the most compelling theory? William finally realized that silence was being spun as guilt. That every time he turned the other cheek, another falsehood was etched into the public record, unchallenged, uncorrected. And according to insiders, Meghan was about to release a book. one that would detail her emotional trauma at the hands of unnamed royals. One that, in William's view, crossed into defamation, fabrication, and criminal slander. A royal family divided. So where was Harry in all of this? Rumor has it, he was blindsided. Multiple outlets report that Harry was not informed about Meghan's upcoming media plans, particularly her alleged intent to reignite the royal racism narrative. Some even claim Harry begged her to delay it, fearing it would permanently destroy any chance of reconciliation. But Meghan? She reportedly refused. She believed the public was still on her side. She believed Prince William wouldn't dare strike back. And that's where she may have miscalculated. Because this wasn't the old William. This wasn't the carefully PR-trained heir to the throne. This was a father, a brother, and a son, furious, cornered, and, some say, ready to burn the playbook. You want a war? The legal front. It's important to understand something here. Royal legal threats are extremely rare. Even Diana, during her most turbulent days, never faced direct legal warnings from the palace. The institution prefers discretion, deflection, and damage control. But now, reports suggest William has enlisted his own independent legal counsel, separate from Buckingham Palace. Why? To explore options involving public defamation, intentional reputational harm, breach of non-disclosure or informal royal agreements. Even international fraud, if it's proven Meghan monetized confidential royal information under false pretenses. One senior royal advisor, speaking anonymously, told a tabloid, William's patience is gone. This isn't about PR anymore. This is about protecting the institution and his mother's legacy. But here's the kicker. Meghan didn't back down. The power play nobody saw coming. Within 48 hours of William's on-air remark, Meghan's legal team reportedly sent a cease and desist letter. Not to William directly, but to several UK media houses, demanding they cease publishing speculative and defamatory interpretations of alleged private royal remarks. The message was clear. Meghan wasn't playing defense. She was going on the attack. Even more shockingly, a source close to the Sussex camp leaked this chilling quote to a major US outlet. Meghan knows exactly what's been said behind closed doors. If they want to go legal, fine. She's ready to bring receipts. Receipts? That's when the whispers started. Theories that Meghan had been secretly recording certain royal conversations, that she had kept copies of old emails, that she had built a digital archive for this very moment. And suddenly, this wasn't just a war of words. It was a full-blown information war. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What happens when a future king forgets the mic is live? What slips out when he thinks no one's listening? And more importantly, who was listening? Because on that fateful day, Prince William didn't just make a private comment. He made a royal declaration, one that turned into a worldwide headline before the palace could even blink. And here's the kicker. It was never supposed to happen. A setup gone wrong. The event was simple enough. A midweek youth initiative tied to mental health and leadership, held at a local college in central London. Standard fare for a royal engagement. Speeches, staged photo ops, polite handshakes with faculty. The press was there, but the atmosphere was relaxed, controlled. William had done a dozen of these before, maybe more. He knew the dance. Enter gracefully, deliver an empathetic speech, smile for the cameras, leave. But this time, something was different. According to eyewitnesses, William looked distracted, tense. His smile was tight, his movements clipped. And the usually unflappable heir kept checking his phone between engagements, rare for a royal. Why? Because just hours earlier, a new article had dropped in a major US media outlet, an exclusive from a close source to Meghan Markle. And the headline? Meghan to reveal untold Diana stories in memoir. Royals should brace themselves. The straw that broke the crown. The timing couldn't have been worse. William was about to speak at an event celebrating Diana's mental health legacy, one of his most personal causes. And now, a teaser for Meghan's upcoming memoir was circulating online, suggesting she would be the one continuing Diana's mission. Not William. Not Harry. Meghan. One palace insider said William looked like he'd seen a ghost when he read it. Still, he pushed through the event, stood at the podium, spoke with grace, until the question came. A reporter from a lesser-known foreign outlet, one that hadn't been vetted by the palace media office, asked bluntly, Your Royal Highness, how do you respond to claims in the U.S. press that your sister-in-law is taking over Princess Diana's legacy? Silence. William blinked. His jaw tightened. Cameras kept rolling. He turned to step off the stage. And that's when it happened. The hot mic moment. The BBC's lapel mic, clipped subtly to his collar, was still active. So was the boom mic above the stage. And both captured the low, furious growl as William turned away and hissed to an aide beside him. She thinks she's untouchable. I swear, if she keeps lying like this, I will jail her. Not whispered. Not muttered under breath. Clear. Sharp. Cold. The aide, believed to be a senior palace advisor, froze. You can even spot it on the raw footage later leaked online. A flicker of panic across his face. He knew what just happened. William didn't. Not yet. The scramble begins. Backstage, chaos erupted. Producers scrambled to mute the mics. Royal staff huddled with event coordinators. Phones buzzed like beehives. One aide allegedly turned pale when he saw the audio waveform already uploaded to a news server. It was too late. A junior journalist, stationed near the audio desk, had recorded a direct feed. Within 47 minutes, the clip had made its way onto a private Discord server frequented by international tabloid reporters. Within 2 hours, it was trending on Twitter, or X, as it's now known. And within 12 hours, every major paper in the UK and US was running variations of the same headline. Prince William threatens Meghan Markle. I will jail her. The palace in panic mode. Kensington Palace issued no statement. They didn't deny the quote. They didn't confirm it either. Instead, the official schedule for Prince William's next 3 public appearances was quietly wiped from the royal website. Inside sources say the palace had never seen him like this. He's not just angry, said one royal advisor. He feels betrayed. He's done playing the nice guy. The moment Meghan touched his mother's memory, that was it. And the reaction from the public? Split. Violently so. Some defended William, calling him brave for finally standing up to Meghan's alleged manipulation. Others were appalled, accusing the prince of using threats and intimidation. But both sides agreed on one thing. Something irreversible had just happened. Meghan's camp responds. Meanwhile, in Montecito, the Sussex PR machine spun into overdrive. Their official spokesperson dismissed the leak as unverified audio with questionable intent. But off the record, different story. Multiple U.S. outlets claimed Meghan was deeply hurt, shocked, and considering legal retaliation. One anonymous friend even stated, she's not scared. She's furious. She's considering playing every card in her deck. That same day, photographers spotted Meghan leaving a high-rise law firm in downtown Los Angeles. Coincidence? Doubtful. The audio analysis war. Within 24 hours, 3 independent media labs ran forensic analysis on the clip. All 3 verified the same thing. The voice matched William's speaking cadence. The background matched the charity event acoustics. There were no cuts, no manipulations, no AI overlays. This wasn't a deep fake. This was real. And that's when the narrative shifted from, did he really say that, to, what did he mean by it? Was it just emotional bluster? Or was it a genuine legal threat? Hidden clues from royal history. Now, here's something few people know. Under certain archaic statutes, a sitting monarch can initiate private legal action for defamation or treasonous conduct, especially if it affects national dignity or international relations. It's almost never used. But according to one royal constitutional scholar, if William ascends the throne and there is evidence of deliberate harm caused by another royal, especially someone who misused their title for personal gain, he could, in theory, pursue legal channels. It wouldn't be easy, but it's not impossible. Which raises a terrifying possibility. What if William wasn't just venting, but warning? The aide who heard it all. And here's where the story takes an even darker turn. The aide standing next to William during the hot mic moment? He's gone. Removed from duty just 72 hours after the leak. No official explanation. No new assignment. Vanished. Some say he was silenced. Others claim he quit out of guilt. But an anonymous tipster reached out to a foreign journalist, claiming the aide had been recording more than just that one moment. Allegedly, a private voice memo exists, one where William lays out, in detail, his frustrations with Meghan's manipulations, weaponization of media, and personal vendettas. No one's heard it. Not yet. But if it leaks? Game over. But what came next would escalate everything and force the Queen's private legal counsel to step in. What if this wasn't chaos? What if it wasn't emotional fallout, miscommunication, or a family feud spiraling out of control? What if this had all been planned from the very beginning? Because once the dust settled from the hot mic explosion, a far more unsettling question began circulating among royal insiders, journalists, and even former allies of the Sussexes. Was Meghan Markle playing a long game? And if so, how long had it been running? The pattern nobody wanted to see. At first glance, everything looked reactive. A bad interview here, a hurtful headline there, a defensive documentary, a memoir that just needed to be told. That's how it was framed. But when analysts began laying events out on a timeline, not emotionally, not politically, but strategically, something eerie emerged. Every major move came just before a critical royal milestone. Engagement announcements, trooping the color, jubilee celebrations, major Commonwealth tours, Diana-related memorials. Coincidence? Or choreography? Ask yourself this. How many times can timing be unfortunate before it becomes intentional? The first clue, the early media web. Long before the wedding bells rang, Meghan had already done something unusual. She didn't just enter the royal family. She entered it with pre-existing media pipelines, old friends from Hollywood PR firms, lifestyle journalists who had followed her career, editors who owed her favors, producers who already saw her not as a duchess, but as a brand. One former entertainment publicist said it bluntly. She never shut down the Hollywood network. She just paused it. Paused it. Like you'd pause a project. Like you'd pause a plan. And when did those connections suddenly reactivate? Right around the time palace tensions allegedly reached their peak. Victimhood as currency. Here's where things get uncomfortable. In modern media culture, victimhood sells. It sells books. It sells interviews. It sells documentaries. It sells relevance. And some critics argue Meghan understood this better than anyone in the royal orbit. Think about it. Every time she spoke publicly, there was a familiar rhythm, a polished opening, a moment of vulnerability, a carefully framed grievance, an implication, never explicit, always implied, that the palace was to blame. No names, no dates, no verifiable specifics, just enough ambiguity to spark outrage, and just enough restraint to avoid direct legal consequences. It was storytelling by suggestion, and it worked, until it didn't. The Oprah effect, a turning point. The Oprah interview changed everything, not just because of what was said, but because of how it was said. The pauses, the sighs, the tears that never quite fell. Media psychologists later noted something striking. Meghan controlled the emotional tempo of the interview with surgical precision. When Oprah leaned in, Meghan leaned back. When the audience expected anger, Meghan offered sadness. When viewers expected specifics, she delivered feelings. That's not accidental. That's training. Or at the very least, preparation. But what about Harry? Here's the contradiction that makes this story explosive. Prince Harry often appeared out of sync with Meghan's narrative. He spoke emotionally, impulsively, sometimes contradictorily. In one interview, he blamed the press. In another, the institution. In another, his family. But Meghan? Her story rarely changed. The same beats, the same framing, the same emotional arc, almost like she was reading from a script. Which leads to an uncomfortable possibility. What if Harry wasn't leading this movement, but following it? The exit that paid off. When the Sussexes announced their departure from royal duties, it was framed as an escape. Freedom, safety, independence. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. Contracts, big ones, streaming platforms, publishers, speaking agencies, deals worth tens of millions, all contingent on one thing: access to the royal story, and not the fairy tale version, the messy one, the painful one, the controversial one. Ask yourself, would those deals exist without conflict? Without accusations? Without tension? Probably not. Which raises the question no one wanted to ask out loud. Was the conflict the product? Or the pitch? The narrative lock-in. Once you tell a story publicly, you're trapped by it. Change it, and you look dishonest. Soften it, and you look manipulative. Contradict it, and you lose credibility. Royal insiders claim this is where Meghan's alleged strategy backfired. She couldn't walk it back, because too much money, reputation, and identity had already been tied to the narrative of mistreatment. So when palace sources tried to quietly reconcile, when intermediaries offered olive branches, the answer, reportedly, was always the same. It's too late. Too late for peace. Too late for silence. Too late for compromise. The Diana card, carefully played. Now we arrive at the most sensitive piece of this puzzle. Princess Diana. For William, Diana is memory, grief, and legacy. For the public, she is myth. And according to several royal commentators, Meghan understood something crucial. You don't attack the monarchy head-on. You invoke Diana. Not directly, not disrespectfully, but emotionally. The parallels, the comparisons, the subtle echoes. History repeating itself. A woman silenced by the institution. A mother protecting her children. To the public, it felt familiar. To William, it felt calculated. And that's when concern turned into fury. Internal warnings ignored. Here's something that rarely makes headlines. Multiple advisors allegedly warned Meghan early on. Stop escalating. Leave Diana out of it. Let things cool down. But escalation had become the engine. Each interview had to be bigger. Each revelation more shocking. Each claim more emotionally charged. Because in the media economy, yesterday's outrage is today's old news. And relevance is fleeting. The moment William realized the truth. According to one source close to the heir, William had an epiphany shortly before the hot mic incident. He realized this wasn't about misunderstanding. It wasn't about cultural differences. It wasn't even about Harry. It was about control of narrative power. Who gets to define the royal story? Who gets to speak for Diana? Who gets the world's sympathy? And once William saw that, something snapped. Because you can negotiate with anger. You can negotiate with hurt. But you cannot negotiate with a strategy built on perpetual conflict. Meghan's calculated calm. Here's the final twist in this chapter. After the hot mic audio leaked, Meghan didn't respond emotionally. No tearful statement. No impulsive Instagram post. No angry interview. Instead, silence. A calm that unnerved even her critics. Because silence, in moments like these, isn't weakness. It's preparation. And sources claim that behind that silence, her legal and media teams were already assembling the next move. One designed not just to respond to William, but to force his hand. And that's when the palace realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a family feud anymore. It was a chess match. And the next move wouldn't be made on television, but in a courtroom. But what came next would drag the monarchy into legal territory it had avoided for generations. And there would be no turning back. What if the proof wasn't coming from Meghan? What if it wasn't coming from Prince William? What if the most damaging evidence came from the people who were never supposed to speak at all? Because just days after the hot mic moment detonated across the media landscape, something quietly slipped into the public bloodstream. Something that made even seasoned royal correspondents sit up straight. Internal palace memos. Not press statements. Not spin. Not anonymous whispers. Actual written documents. And once they surfaced, the story changed forever. The leak that shouldn't exist. It started with a screenshot. Blurry. Cropped. Posted anonymously to a small Royal Watcher forum at 2:14 a.m. London time. At first, most people ignored it. Another fake, they assumed. Another LARP. Another troll looking for attention. But then journalists noticed something odd. The formatting was correct. The header matched internal Kensington Palace style. The phrasing, formal, clinical, restrained, felt authentic. And most chilling of all, the memo wasn't written about Meghan. It was written by her. Narrative alignment, a strange phrase. The document was titled simply, Narrative Alignment, Phase Review. That phrase alone raised eyebrows. Narrative alignment. That wasn't royal language. That was corporate language. Media language. Brand language. According to palace insiders, the memo was allegedly circulated among a small group of senior aides during Meghan's final year as a working royal. And its contents? Explosive. Inside the memo outlined several objectives. Not requests. Not concerns. Objectives. They included ensuring consistent portrayal of emotional distress across platforms, strategic amplification of perceived institutional resistance, leveraging third-party validation to reinforce lived experience, Preserving future storytelling optionality. Optionality, as in keeping doors open, as in monetization, as in planning ahead. One former royal aide reportedly said, shaking his head, that wasn't the voice of someone overwhelmed. That was the voice of someone organizing a rollout. Disbelief inside the palace. When senior staff first saw the memo, many thought it was fake. They had to, because the alternative was unthinkable. That a senior member of the royal family had been strategically planning public perception while still representing the crown. That she was framing internal friction not as something to resolve, but as something to use. One aide allegedly wrote in the margin, "This reads like a PR brief, not a personal reflection." And that comment would come back to haunt them. The second memo, even worse. If the first memo raised alarms, the second one set off sirens. This one was shorter, colder, more direct. Its subject line, escalation triggers. Escalation. Triggers. Words that should never appear in the same sentence as royal duty. The memo allegedly listed specific scenarios that would justify controlled disclosure to external media partners. Among them, perceived undermining of personal narrative, challenges to credibility from senior royals, attempts to silence or reframe lived experience, threats to long-term autonomy. And then, at the bottom, if above conditions met, proceed with phase release. Phase release. Not speak out. Not tell the truth. Release. The room where it all changed. According to multiple insiders, the moment these memos were fully reviewed was the moment the palace stopped believing reconciliation was possible. Because now, the conflict wasn't emotional. It was operational. One senior advisor reportedly told Prince William, "This isn't about hurt feelings anymore. This is about intent." And William listened closely. How the leaks escaped the palace. Here's where the plot thickens. The palace has one of the tightest information security systems in the world. So how did these memos get out? The prevailing theory? Disillusioned aides. Staff members who felt trapped between loyalty to the crown and fear of being complicit in something unethical. One former aide, speaking anonymously to a European journalist, said, "We weren't just managing schedules. We were being asked to manage perception." That crossed a line. Another source claimed that several aides quietly copied internal correspondence to personal devices, not to leak immediately, but as insurance. Insurance against being blamed later. Insurance against history being rewritten. The Meghan response, carefully worded. Once the memos hit mainstream media, Meghan's team moved fast. A spokesperson released a statement calling the documents selectively edited, contextually distorted, and weaponized by hostile actors. Not fake, not fabricated, just distorted. A subtle but important distinction. And notably, no outright denial that the memos existed. Harry's alleged reaction. Here's a detail that didn't make the front pages. Sources claim Prince Harry was stunned by the leaks, that he hadn't seen the memos before, that he confronted Meghan privately, asking, "Why didn't you tell me about this?" No response has ever been confirmed. But shortly afterward, Harry canceled a planned appearance at a veterans charity event, citing personal reasons. Those close to him say he looked shaken, conflicted, torn between loyalty to his wife and the sinking realization that he may not have known the full plan. The media turns. Up until this point, much of the press had framed Meghan as reactive, defensive, responding to mistreatment. But memos change narratives. Because memos imply foresight. They imply preparation. And suddenly, the question dominating editorials wasn't, was Meghan treated unfairly? It was the public manipulated? William's private fury. Inside Kensington Palace, William reportedly reacted not with rage, but with cold resolve. This wasn't emotional anymore. It was procedural. He instructed legal advisors to catalog every instance where public statements appeared to align with memo objectives. Patterns emerged. Dates lined up. Language matched. The so-called long con theory was no longer speculation. It was becoming a case file. The memo about Diana. And then came the document that broke William. A short internal note, allegedly drafted weeks before a major interview. Its subject line, Diana narrative sensitivity. The memo advised careful positioning when referencing Diana, not to overuse her name, but to evoke parallels through emotional cadence. Emotional cadence. For William, that wasn't strategy. That was sacrilege. That was someone turning his mother's memory into a communications tool. And according to those present, that was the moment William stopped thinking like a brother and started thinking like a future king. Aides choose sides. As the leaks continued, something unprecedented happened inside the royal ecosystem. Staff began choosing sides. Some defended Meghan, arguing the memos were misinterpreted. Others felt deceived. Meetings grew tense. Whispers replaced trust. And one senior aide reportedly said something chilling during a closed-door briefing. If this ever goes to court, those memos will matter more than any interview. Court. That word, once unthinkable, was now being spoken aloud. The countdown begins. By the end of that week, the palace had assembled a confidential dossier, not for public release, not for PR, but for something far more serious. And Meghan's camp, sensing the shift, prepared their own countermove. Because this wasn't about reputation anymore. It was about survival. And someone, somewhere, was about to force the first official legal step. But what came next would push Prince William past restraint and into a confrontation that would fracture the family beyond repair. What would it take for the future King of England to abandon diplomacy, to throw away decades of restraint, duty, and carefully rehearsed silence? One word: betrayal. Not political betrayal, not media betrayal, personal betrayal. Because as the palace reeled from the leaked memos, as legal departments scrambled to contain the fallout and aides fled their posts, Prince William reached a point no royal had publicly crossed since Edward VIII abdicated the throne. He stopped trying to protect the institution and started protecting the truth, or at least his truth. A brother's last line. They say every royal feud, no matter how scandalous, contains an unwritten pact. Don't humiliate the bloodline. Harry had crossed that line multiple times, but William had always held back. Even when Meghan accused unnamed royals of racism, even when Harry described him as trapped, even when palace aides were reduced to sobbing in hallways. William stayed silent, because silence was power, and because, despite it all, he still believed reconciliation was possible. But that belief shattered when he saw the memos. Because this time, it wasn't just Meghan targeting the crown. It was Meghan, allegedly, targeting Diana, and not to honor her, to use her. The memo about the butler. What broke William wasn't the media headlines, or the interviews, or even the Netflix series. It was a private internal communication, buried among other leaked documents, that revealed Meghan's team had allegedly reached out to Diana's former butler, Paul Burrell. Yes, that Paul Burrell. The man who once described himself as Diana's rock. The man who had gone on to write multiple tell-all books. The man the palace had long treated as persona non grata. According to the memo, Meghan's team had considered offering Burrell a consulting role for a media project described cryptically as a personal narrative journey across royal motherhood, past and present. In other words, Diana and Meghan, side by side. Not in truth. In story. William's rage behind closed doors. According to palace insiders, William's reaction was immediate and volcanic. He reportedly stormed into a private strategy meeting, slammed the memo on the table, and said, "She's using my mother like a chess piece. This isn't narrative. It's desecration." Attendees described him as pale, breathless, visibly shaking. Not from embarrassment, from grief. Grief that had never truly healed. And now, being used as alleged ammunition in a media campaign? That was unforgivable. The meeting with King Charles. What followed was a father-son conversation royal historians may one day describe as the moment the monarchy cracked. William went directly to King Charles. Not as heir to monarch, not as Duke of Cambridge, as a son begging for action. Multiple sources confirm that William confronted Charles with the memos, demanding that Meghan's royal titles be revoked and an official statement be issued denouncing her actions. Charles refused. Why? Because Charles still held on to the illusion that time would mend this family. But William, for the first time in his adult life, didn't back down. He reportedly said, "If you won't protect her legacy, I will. Even if that means tearing down the roof." Charles, caught between his sons, again, tried to mediate, but it was too late. William wasn't negotiating anymore. Aides divided, tensions explode. In the days following that confrontation, palace halls turned to ice. Staff were instructed not to mention Meghan or Harry in William's presence. Internal group chats were purged. Security settings tightened. Lawyers began drafting what insiders called worst-case scenario language. And the Queen's private counsel, a man rarely pulled into domestic matters, was suddenly on daily calls with William's legal team. Because the question was no longer if there would be legal retaliation. It was how far it would go. Kate Middleton's private warning. Amid the storm, one voice tried, and failed, to pull William back from the edge. Kate. According to those closest to her, Kate had long been the only person who could temper William's fire. His grief. His rage. But this time, not even she could calm him. She reportedly told him, "Let the public see the truth. You don't have to destroy her to do that." But William replied, "She's already trying to destroy us. You can't sit back and hope a liar tells half the truth. You have to stop them before they rewrite it entirely." It wasn't a tantrum. It was a declaration. And it terrified Kate. The trigger that sealed it. Here's the detail no one expected. Just days after the Diana memo surfaced, a source inside Meghan's Montecito circle leaked something new to the American press. A claim that William once raised his voice at Meghan during a closed-door meeting. No proof. No context. Just the accusation. And William? He snapped. Because that meeting had taken place 2 years ago. And according to palace records, it had been attended by 3 witnesses, all of whom confirmed that William had remained composed. This wasn't just false. It was calculated. It was character assassination. And it meant the gloves were off. The Cambridge file. Within 48 hours, William reportedly ordered the creation of an internal file, dubbed by staff as the Cambridge file, compiling every public statement, press interview, social media post, and recorded quote from Meghan and Harry over the last 5 years, cross-referenced with the leaked memos, tagged for legal vulnerabilities, annotated for defamation thresholds. This was no PR operation. It was evidence. And insiders claim William was preparing to take it somewhere no royal had ever dared. To Parliament. Because while the crown technically holds symbolic power, Parliament controls the titles. And that meant, for the first time in centuries, a royal might petition Parliament to strip another royal's title by vote. A public spectacle. A constitutional crisis. An unprecedented move. And William was ready. Meghan's preemptive strike. Somehow, word got out. Perhaps through a disgruntled aide. Perhaps through a leak inside Whitehall. No one knows. But Meghan's team responded fast. They issued a vague but defiant statement. The Duchess of Sussex remains committed to truth, compassion, and progress. Attempts to silence her will not succeed. That word, silence, wasn't random. It was a message, a warning, that she had more to say, more to show, maybe even more to leak. And then, silence. Following weeks of headlines, fury, and leaked memos, something even more ominous occurred. Everyone went quiet. William stopped making public appearances. Meghan canceled an upcoming podcast series. Harry was spotted alone, boarding a private jet. Lawyers moved behind closed doors. Security around royal estates was tightened. Media contacts suddenly stopped responding. Because something was coming. Something too big, too volatile, too legally delicate to leak in advance. And when it finally arrived, it wasn't a statement. It wasn't an interview. It wasn't even a lawsuit. It was an international legal inquiry, and Meghan Markle's name was on the very first page. But what came next would put her titles, her freedom, and her reputation on the line, all at once. How do you weaponize grief? How do you take a name etched into the hearts of millions, a woman remembered for her compassion, her tragedy, her rebellion, and turn it into a shield for your own agenda? That's what Prince William was asking. Not the public, not the press, but himself. Because while the world debated lawsuits, leaked memos, and the validity of a hot mic, William was stuck on one image. His mother's ghost, being used as a pawn in a battle she never asked for. And when Meghan Markle allegedly crossed that sacred line, it wasn't just disrespect. It was war. The image that broke the internet. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't an article. It wasn't even a direct quote. It was a photograph, leaked by a Netflix insider, strategically released just hours before the platform's newest docuseries trailer. The image? A side-by-side promotional teaser. On the left, Princess Diana exiting a hospital, arm in arm with a young AIDS patient, circa 1989, a photo that became one of the most iconic humanitarian images in royal history. On the right, Meghan Markle, smiling softly, cradling a young girl outside a Montecito children's charity in 2022. No words, no captions, just a simple heading across the top. Two women, one crown, one fight. The reaction inside Buckingham Palace. The silence was immediate. No official statement, no press pushback, no quotes from insiders. Because they were stunned, blindsided. It wasn't just the implied comparison, it was the timing. The series was set to drop 2 days before the 26th anniversary of Diana's death. And for the first time in his adult life, insiders say Prince William openly cursed in front of staff. He reportedly slammed a coffee mug onto the floor and said, "She's turning my mother into a brand. Not a legacy, a brand." Emotional hijacking? That's the phrase one senior aide used when briefing royal counsel on the issue. They described the promotional image and the surrounding trailer content as an act of emotional hijacking, invoking Diana's tragedy to manufacture modern-day victimhood. The public backlash was fast and fierce. Hashtag not Diana. Hashtag she was not yours. Hashtag Diana belongs to all of us. These hashtags trended globally within hours. Some called it empowering. Most called it tone-deaf. And a few, especially in British media, called it deliberately provocative. Meghan's camp fires back. Instead of retreating, Meghan's team doubled down. A source close to her told a U.S. magazine. The Duchess has always felt a deep connection to Princess Diana. As a mother, as a woman of color married into the monarchy, and as someone who dared to challenge the system. That phrase, woman of color married into the monarchy, immediately triggered another firestorm. Because while Diana had suffered at the hands of the firm, her struggles were never racialized. But Meghan was drawing new lines, new parallels, new weapons. William's breaking point, public and private. For William, this wasn't just inappropriate. It was personal. He reportedly made an unprecedented demand to the Crown's media team. "We respond immediately, or I do it myself." But palace officials, still clinging to royal protocol, hesitated. So William acted on his own. In a private, off-camera meeting with a trusted BBC correspondent, he said one sentence that would later be quoted anonymously in every tabloid on earth. "Diana wasn't a tool, and if anyone treats her like one, I will respond accordingly." He didn't name Meghan. He didn't need to. The heart of the issue, who owns Diana's legacy? Let's strip the emotion for a moment. At the center of this storm is one impossible question. Who owns the memory of Diana? William, as her eldest son? Harry, the one who's publicly mourned her most? The Crown, who buried her with state honors? The public, who never let her die? Or Meghan, who many claim has revived Diana's rebellious spirit in modern form? There are no easy answers. But for William, the answer is absolutely not Meghan. Especially not when her platform is allegedly built on accusations against the very family Diana once called home. The Oprah echo. Rewind. Remember Meghan's now infamous Oprah interview? The moment when she said, "I didn't want to live anymore. And I thought it would solve everything for everyone." That quote was raw, painful, haunting. And yet, critics claimed its emotional structure mirrored Diana's Panorama interview decades prior. Not word for word, but rhythm, tone, timing. And while many sympathized with Meghan's honesty, William reportedly felt sick, not because she had spoken out about her pain, but because she had spoken it in the same cadence as his mother. That was the moment, insiders claim, when he began to suspect the comparisons weren't accidental. They were deliberate. Kate's quiet intervention, again. Sources say Kate Middleton, always the voice of grace in these storms, tried once more to cool things down. She suggested inviting Meghan privately to Diana's memorial garden for a quiet moment of unity. A photo op? No. A peace gesture. A reminder of shared humanity. William refused. He told Kate, "This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a performance. And it's hurting Mum's name." And with that, even the last thread of reconciliation snapped. The public turns. Polls don't lie. Following the release of the two women, One Crown teaser, public opinion shifted dramatically in the UK. And not in Meghan's favor. 63% said the Diana comparison was in poor taste. 71% said the royal family should respond more forcefully. 48% believed Meghan was intentionally provoking Prince William. For the first time, even U.S. media began asking harder questions. Was Meghan using Diana's image to protect herself from criticism? Was she blurring the line between tribute and exploitation? And most controversially, was she rewriting royal history in her own image? Behind the scenes, William's lawyers speak. What came next wasn't public, but it was powerful. William's legal team issued a cease and desist letter to the streaming platform airing the docuseries, not to block it, but to force the removal of a specific segment, allegedly one where Meghan compares the royal machine to a controlling force that did to her what it once did to Diana. That quote was never aired, but the legal pressure worked. The scene was cut, and Meghan's team, furious, began preparing for what insiders described as a full-on rights battle. Harry's deafening silence. Here's the strange part. Harry said nothing. No statements. No press appearances. No defense of Meghan's comparisons. And some royal observers began to wonder, was Harry, too, uncomfortable with the Diana parallel? Or was he being silenced? Controlled? Or, perhaps, conflicted? After all, Harry had long said his greatest fear was history repeating itself. But if the public began to believe Meghan was consciously recreating that history, wouldn't that make Harry complicit? And just as that question reached fever pitch, a new scandal erupted, one that had nothing to do with Diana, and everything to do with the secret Hollywood deals Meghan had kept hidden even from Harry himself. What came next would unravel Meghan's financial empire and expose the billion-dollar game beneath the royal headlines. What if the interviews weren't the whole story? What if the books, the podcasts, the documentaries were just the tip of something much deeper and far more orchestrated? Because while the world debated hot mics, leaked memos, and Diana's legacy, something far more dangerous had quietly taken root beneath the headlines. Hollywood, not the glitz, not the glamour, the machine. And at the center of that machine, according to confidential sources and leaked contracts, was Meghan Markle. Not just as a subject, as a producer, as a strategist, as a storyteller with an alleged blueprint, not just for her life after royalty, but for controlling the narrative of royalty itself. And when Prince William discovered what those scripts contained, he didn't just feel betrayed. He felt ambushed. The discovery that started it all. It began with a routine clearance check. Netflix executives, preparing to greenlight Meghan's upcoming docuseries, Pearl, were reviewing archived pitches from the Duchess's media company, Archwell Productions. And buried inside one of those pitch decks? A treatment. A fictional drama series proposal with characters uncannily similar to real members of the royal family. One executive, concerned about legal exposure, flagged the treatment internally. But someone leaked it. First to a British media watchdog, then to a U.S. gossip site, and finally to the palace. The Lily Files, Fiction or Veiled Attack. The working title was The Lily Files. Presented as a prestige drama about a biracial American woman navigating a centuries-old European monarchy, the series pitch described the main character, Lily, as an ambitious, idealistic woman thrust into a cold institution that values silence over soul. The fictional queen was described as manipulative. Her son, heir to the throne, was icy and humorless. The younger prince was fragile, heartbroken, and controlled by loyalty. Sound familiar? Critics thought so too. William's furious response. The moment William was briefed on the leaked treatment, he reportedly stood up from his desk and said only one thing. This is revenge porn. In disguise. To him, this wasn't satire. It was a dramatized smear campaign, allegedly cloaked in creative freedom but built on private pain. A way to say things she couldn't say in interviews. To imply without consequence. To fictionalize without responsibility. To poison the well, one emotional monologue at a time. And it made him livid. Royal aides demand action. Upon reviewing the documents, Kensington Palace advisors called an emergency session. One aide reportedly described the series' proposal as emotional defamation. Another said, she's not telling her story anymore. She's rewriting ours. Legal experts were brought in. Could a fictional drama, clearly inspired by real events, be subject to injunction? Could they prove defamation if names were changed? The answer, maybe. And that was enough for William. Harry's alleged shock. According to one Hollywood insider, Harry was never shown the original script. While he was busy promoting their joint Netflix documentary, Meghan's creative team had allegedly developed the fictional series without full transparency. When confronted, he reportedly said, "I thought we agreed to tell our story, not make up one." But by then, it was too late. The leaks had spread, the press had headlines, and Meghan's critics had fresh ammunition. Meghan's defense, inspired by many. Meghan's legal team quickly responded, stating the script was a work of fiction inspired by many global stories of women navigating systemic adversity, not a depiction of any real person or institution. But the palace wasn't buying it, because too many elements matched. Too many themes aligned. Too many quotes echoed her real-life interviews. In fact, one scene described a tea-room confrontation between Lily and the fictional queen, eerily similar to the real bridesmaid dress incident between Meghan and Kate. Coincidence? Or calculated? The Hollywood pipeline. Behind the scenes, Meghan had quietly built a network. Former Netflix executives, PR strategists, writers for hire, one former Suits showrunner. Her vision? To become, as one insider put it, the Shonda Rhimes of royal pain. Not just a duchess, a creator, a mogul, a voice that could shape, bend, and monetize the very history that once rejected her. And she was making progress, fast. Until now, the palace's next move. William, determined not to let this fictional Lily rewrite history, instructed legal aides to draft a formal cease and desist, not just to Meghan, but to Netflix itself. The letter reportedly included a list of dialogue lines believed to match real royal conversations, dates and locations of events allegedly fictionalized from true royal moments, a threat of international defamation proceedings if the series aired without significant revision. Netflix paused development for now, but behind closed doors, Meghan's camp was livid. One insider quoted her as saying, "They're scared of my voice. And they should be." Meghan's secret production arm. Leaked emails later revealed that Meghan had quietly secured funding for 2 additional projects under shell production companies. One was a podcast exploring modern monarchy through a feminist lens. The other? A docudrama called Blood and Titles. And the kicker? Blood and Titles was reportedly pitched as a fictionalized breakdown of a royal family undone by secrets, jealousy, and class warfare. By this point, even Meghan's defenders were squirming. Because at what point does art become attack? Hollywood pushback. Even in liberal entertainment circles, backlash grew. Several showrunners, once open to collaboration, began distancing themselves. One anonymous producer told The Hollywood Reporter, "There's a difference between telling your truth and turning trauma into a franchise." Meanwhile, Meghan's projects lost momentum. Sponsorships froze. Talent agencies got cold feet. A-list voice actors dropped out of Pearl, and whispers started circulating. Was Meghan Markle becoming radioactive? William's vindication. For William, it was both a victory and a tragedy. He hadn't wanted a media war, but he'd won a round. More importantly, he had exposed something critical to the world, that behind the polished interviews and victimhood framing was a business. A billion-dollar machine, powered by pain, produced for profit. And in William's eyes, it was built on betrayal. Meghan's next move. But if William thought this was over, he was wrong. Because Meghan still had one final card to play. And it wasn't a documentary. It wasn't a podcast. It wasn't even a lawsuit. It was an international stage. A live platform. A moment where cameras would roll, and the truth, or her version of it, would be broadcast to the world in real time. And this time, even Parliament was watching. What came next would force William to issue a midnight decree, and Meghan to face the most public reckoning of her life. What happens when royal silence turns into legal strategy? When centuries of discretion are abandoned? For subpoenas, legal counsel, and a full-blown royal dossier prepared not for public relations, but for criminal prosecution? Because what began as a family feud, a Netflix drama, a battle of reputations, had now escalated into something far more dangerous. An impending legal bombshell. And Meghan Markle, once a royal, then a rebel, now a media mogul, found herself at the center of it all. The palace legal machine awakens. For decades, the monarchy has avoided lawsuits like the plague. Why? Because courtrooms demand evidence, discovery, depositions, things the palace can't always control. But when Prince William reviewed the growing mountain of memos, recordings, alleged fabrications, and leaked script treatments, he made a chilling decision. Silence wasn't protection anymore. It was enabling. And if Meghan wasn't going to stop voluntarily, the law would make her. The case begins, quietly. It started with a confidential legal inquiry initiated under William's authority, not through Buckingham Palace, but through a private royal trust. The subject line on the internal report? Preliminary evaluation, grounds for defamation and fraudulent misrepresentation. 3 categories were being explored. Defamation. Public statements by Meghan alleged to have caused reputational harm to specific royals, particularly William, Kate, and King Charles. Fraud. Allegations that Meghan misrepresented royal relationships or duties in order to obtain media contracts and public speaking deals. Breach of privilege. Sharing internal royal communications under NDAs or informal confidentiality pacts, particularly around Diana and Commonwealth engagements. In other words, if proven, this wasn't just scandalous. It was criminal. The lawyers involved, and what they found. William's legal team wasn't just some stuffy internal department. He had brought in 2 of the most aggressive defamation barristers in the UK, both with track records of destroying celebrities in court, and more importantly, winning against billion-pound corporations. One had previously helped Rupert Murdoch's empire dodge lawsuits. The other took down a Russian oligarch for media manipulation. Now they were both working for the crown, and within 14 days, they had compiled a dossier of over 400 pages. It included timeline of Meghan's media statements versus private royal records, conflicting testimonies between interviews and emails, financial records allegedly tied to royal access pitches, 3 examples of clear contradictions between Meghan's published accounts and confidential royal calendars. One lawyer reportedly said, if this were anyone else, she'd already be under formal investigation. The fraud angle, the real bombshell. Defamation was bad, but fraud? Fraud was catastrophic. Because if Meghan had allegedly used her royal status to secure financial opportunities, while misrepresenting her role or fabricating insider knowledge, she could be open to charges under UK and US fraud statutes. Let that sink in. If proven, this could implicate publishing deals, Netflix contracts, paid interviews, trademark filings, and possibly even her US immigration paperwork. Because remember, Meghan Markle is still an American citizen, and if she filed for business permits or corporate filings under representations later found to be false, that's international wire fraud, which means the FBI could get involved. Meghan's legal defense, assembling a fortress. The moment rumors of this internal investigation leaked to the media, and make no mistake, they did. Meghan's legal team mobilized like a presidential defense unit. High-powered attorneys in LA, New York, and London. Crisis PR strategists. Reputation management firms. One source said they were preparing for war. Another insider, closer to the Sussex camp, reportedly said, she's not going to be intimidated by William. She's done nothing illegal, but she is prepared to countersue. The public reaction, shifting again. Polls began shifting again. After the 2 women, 1 crown teaser, public sentiment had started turning against Meghan. Now, it was worse. One British poll showed 74% of respondents believed Meghan should lose her royal titles if found guilty of intentional misrepresentation. Even in the US, cracks appeared. Talk show hosts who once fawned over her were now asking pointed questions. Was she exaggerating? Was she manipulating facts for fame? And most damning of all, was she monetizing trauma? Parliament enters the chat. Here's where it gets unprecedented. Under intense pressure from Conservative MPs and Royalist lobby groups, a motion was tabled in Parliament to review whether British citizenship, peerage rights, or titles should be automatically revoked if a royal is found to have committed fraud or defamation against the state. Though symbolic at first, the message was loud and clear. Meghan's war with the monarchy had officially become a matter of national interest. Harry's breaking point. Caught in the middle of a media firestorm and legal storm even worse, Harry's silence became impossible to ignore. Insiders say he held private calls with both Charles and William, pleading for a pause. not because he disagreed with the legal action, but because he feared it would destroy Meghan. One quote, allegedly overheard during a phone call in Kensington. "I love her, but I didn't sign up for this." To which William reportedly responded, "Neither did we." And now the crown's at stake. Internal royal emails surface. Then came the next leak. Internal emails from the early days of Meghan's royal transition, showing staff voicing concern about reputational risk, record-keeping inconsistencies, and contradictory statements from Meghan during meetings with charity sponsors. These weren't media leaks. They were evidence. Evidence that royal staff had documented concerns in real time, as far back as 2018. Which means any claim that this was a witch hunt suddenly collapsed. Meghan's PR gambit, the Oprah follow-up. In response to the building legal pressure, Meghan's team floated a trial balloon. A potential Oprah follow-up interview. Not to fight the allegations, to reframe them. The concept? A deeply personal discussion about accountability, growth, and the cost of truth. Sound familiar? It was the same playbook. And this time, the palace saw it coming. Because by using media to emotionally inoculate the public against legal action, Meghan's team was allegedly attempting to do what they'd done so well before. Turn a scandal into a story. Turn consequences into compassion. Turn scrutiny into sympathy. William's legal trigger. The palace had seen enough. Late one night, under full legal advisory and quiet coordination with royal constitutional lawyers, Prince William issued a private legal order, an unprecedented move for a future king, authorizing the preparation of formal charges.